Welcome to the Respect Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Domish from MikeSpeaks.com, where we help organizations of all sizes, educational institutions, and the U.S. military create a culture of respect. And respect is exactly what we discuss on this show, so let's get started. Welcome to this episode. I want to introduce right away our special guest. Dr. Omékongo Dibinga is the founding director of UPstander International and professor of cross-cultural communication at American University. He speaks nationally and internationally on issues of leadership and diversity. Thank you, Omékongo, for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I want to dive right into this because you talk about culture. How do you view the culture of respect today in America?
It's dwindling rapidly. I said yesterday, just when I was doing a random post online, I felt like a couple of years ago, I was saying, I fear that we're losing the ability to discuss with each other and talk with each other and find common ground. I'm now at a point where I'm saying we've lost it. And I feel like we have to get it back. This culture of respect, this quote unquote, I'm not PC type of culture that we're dealing with right now we're living in a culture where we embrace ignorance and we celebrate not knowing about each other, and on top of that, acting on what we don't know about each other, and it's really scary times.
Yeah, I always find that an interesting conversation when people talk about, it's too politically correct, and usually what they're referring to is offensive or degrading language.
That's right.
And so what you actually we go, wait a second, are you actually saying being respectful is politically correct? That's what
right,
you're calling
right.
politically correct? Because I want you to treat somebody with respect. That's being too politically correct. And that's what I see happening. Is that what you're describing there?
That's exactly what I see happening. And when you see people saying, I don't care what gender you self-identify as, I'm going to say this. I don't care what you call yourself in terms of your religion. I'm going to say this. You are this. Those basic fundamental issues that we were all taught, that many of us at least were taught about, common courtesy, calling somebody by their name, all of those things. And again, it's not that they're just disappearing. They're being celebrated. People are celebrating being ignorant and not knowing. And that is, Dr. King said the two most dangerous things on the planet are sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. All of us are sincerely ignorant on some issue. But most of us, when we find out we're ignorant, we seek to learn better. But conscientious stupidity is, I don't know and I don't care to know. Or I know and I'm just going to ignore it. And both of those are incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, and they're built in this self-righteous. And don't get me wrong, we can all be self-righteous. So I'm not saying that any of us haven't been or aren't, daily, weekly, yearly, whatever, we can be self-righteous. But it's this idea that I love that you're bringing up is the important aspect of it, is that it's taking pride in, I don't care. I don't care what makes you feel bad. That's your problem.
That's right. And once we realize it, again, I'll quote Dr. King again, learning to live together as brothers, and I'll add as sisters, or perish as fools. At some point, we have to realize that we are all in this together. And we have to realize what affects one person should affect you. Because if you don't act when you see it, it's just a matter of time before it's hitting your door as well. And I think it was a great quotation that talked about, and I'm paraphrasing, when they came for one group, I didn't say anything because I wasn't. When they came for the socialists, I didn't care because I wasn't that group. When they came for and I'm just making up different groups here now. When they came for the Jewish people, I didn't say anything because I wasn't part of that Jew group. When they came for the black people, I didn't say anything. And now they come for me and nobody's here to support me. And so I know the first person's name, his name was Neiman, and I know he had different groups in there, but the idea is the same. If you don't stand up when you're seeing other people suffering, it's just a matter of time before it comes to your door, and nobody's going to be there to have your back either.
Yeah, and this is a point that I brought up in the past too, which is those of us who are fighting to create a culture of respect, also we have to treat the counter voice individuals with dignity and respect, or we have no chance of transformation for them or us in creating that culture. Because I think what happens is, what you were saying, the quote from Martin Luther King Jr. about the conscientious stupidity is then what happens is some of us, not all, but some of us will go, see how stupid they're being. And that's not what you mean by that, but that's by saying, hey, we could all fall into consciousness stupidity. But when we go to the individual and like, look how stupid they're being, now we're playing back into the exactly what we don't want to be treated. We don't want them treating people with a lack of dignity and respect, but we're treating them with a lack of dignity and respect. So I can say, wow, we need to discuss our core values here and where we disagree, or our beliefs or our behaviors, without attack of the individual.
Absolutely. Look, I teach at American University and I speak at college campuses across the country. So at American University, I teach cross-cultural communication, like you said. And the first thing I tell them on the first day of class is, look, this is a free space. This is not a space. My classroom is not a classroom where you're going to get graded if you think like me. I'm out there on social media. You can easily see what I think about issues. I don't care what you think about anything. What I care is how you think. I care how you're informed. I said, if you are somebody who just watches CNN all day, or only watches Fox all day, or only watches MSNBC, you have a one-sided opinion on issues. And this is a class where you have to explore. I welcome you to explore different ideas. And I welcome you to respect the ideas of others. I tell them, I don't care if you're liberal, Republican, conservative, Democrat. We have to work on how we think. And to this day, I've been there 4 years. Students who come to visit me, all backgrounds. I got, Muslim, Christian, conservative students, everybody. And you take an issue like Black Lives Matter, really divisive issue in this country right now. People write papers in my class on Black Lives Matter perspective, supporting it. Some write from All Lives Matter supporting it. And they both can get stellar grades in my class because they show me that they're learning how to think, that they're taking other ideas into consideration, even if they disagree with them. It's called critical thinking. And we've lost that in this country, and we need to get back to it desperately, or we're doomed.
Well, and I love the fact that you bring up, do you just watch CNN or MSNBC, or you just watch Fox News? And even those who go, no, I watch both, we have to stop and ask ourselves, if we are watching both, are we watching them truly, honestly open to both? Or do I love CNN and I go watch Fox News to hate it, right? Or do I love Fox News and I watch CNN to hate it?
Right.
Or do I go there and go, where do they have something that looks objective? Where's the article here that looks objective that I'm not seeing at the other one?
We grew up, high school and everything, different, check your sources, verify your facts. What did Ronald Reagan say back in the day? Trust but verify, right? But now it's just like in this society where you can curate your information, where if we go both to your YouTube page and my YouTube page and look at the side videos, they're all, my page is going to be completely different, even though it's the same website, because our news gets curated based on what we've been watching before. So nowadays you can only listen to Rush Limbaugh, you can only listen to Wolf Blitzer, you could only listen to Rachel Maddow, you can only listen to Stephen Colbert and get fed the same thing. And like you said, you can go to your network and go, yeah. And then you go to the other network and be like, boo, 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 because you're looking for that. It's like, waiting to speak, as opposed to, listening to what someone else has to say. And I believe that we can do better. That's why I teach. That's why I engage the young people, because I believe they're going to save us.
So how do we do it? What are steps each of us can take to try to transform this situation from where it currently is?
The first thing is we have to start genuinely listening. Someone once said, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. We're supposed to use them in proportion. Stop waiting to speak and actually hear what somebody has to say. First of all, take notes, like when they're talking. Ask them follow-up questions. What we do in this society is, we're extremely dismissive. We're just quick to say, oh, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. Because, whatever. And so, for example, I was applying for a job once, and I was told that I couldn't get this job. They told me to my face because we needed to hire more women. I would never walk out of that room and walk up to a woman and say, see, I know what it's like to be discriminated against because of my gender, and diminish their whole experience in this country. So the first thing we have to do is genuinely listen. The second thing we have to do is we have to actually educate ourselves by diversifying our sources. This is hard work. If you're a Wall Street Journal guy or a Washington Post guy or whatever, you actually have to go and pick up a different source, 2 or 3 different sources, see what people are saying about diverse perspectives, and then make your conclusion and engage in the discussion. Those are the basic steps right now. And realize it's okay. You still may not agree, but inform yourself. Make your decision based on an informed idea, and we can start to find common ground. I got a student right now, Republican student, staunch conservative guy, it came into my office today. We were talking, have a great conversation, and he knows where I stand on certain issues. We disagree on a lot. He left that my office hours asking me for a recommendation for a job that he's applying for. And I'm like, absolutely. Because we find the areas we agree on, the areas we may have disagreement on, but he doesn't look at me and say I'm less American than he is, and I wouldn't dare do that to him. So we have to do that. Can we sit down and hear look, when we go back to Black Lives Matter, right? There are real issues that the African American community is facing in this country. There are also real issues that people in law enforcement face as it relates to how they're being perceived. Now, if you come from a background where you've been on the receiving end of some police misconduct, you're instantly going to go pro Black Lives Matter. If you come from a side where you got law enforcement in your family, you're thinking about your uncle's a cop and you've never seen him do wrong, your mother's been a sheriff forever, you're coming from a side where you're siding with the cops first. Okay, you start at point C, I start at point A. How do we get to B? That's what we need to be working on in this country. And the problem is we live in this soundbite snippet culture where we're just hearing one thing and we're automatically going off the rails. We have to do better.
Yeah, and I love the discussion of listening. And everybody can relate to this because if you've ever been in a relationship, now a relationship could be parent-child, which most of us have had one of those, could be a marriage, could be any friendship where you actually start to get into debate. What 95% of us do when we're in a debate is we are already counter-arguing the first 3 words of your sentence. Now, you're about to talk for a minute, and I took the first 5 to 10 seconds, and I am now pre-debating in my mind those 10 seconds. The next 50 seconds, you say, yeah, I'm not hearing.
That's right.
And then I respond to your first 10 seconds, and you're even more infuriated because you said 50 seconds more past that. We're so off subject now. We don't know how to just hold in place and not wait to talk, but just be present in place. And I was the worst at this for years because I love to debate.
Yeah.
And then you have to recognize debate's not about what I say next. It's about listening and trying to learn, and maybe don't try to debate, but instead engage and learn and discover.
And this is where it's gotten worse, Mike, is that now, as you know, we live in this microwave society, so everything has been sped up. If you go to a website and it doesn't load in 6 seconds, you go to the next thing. You don't have to print out pictures anymore. You see it instantly. All of these things, social media, you put something out there, automatically you're getting likes. All of this stuff has affected our ability to process because we're so used now to having everything happen quickly. We're also making up our minds quickly. And as I said before, as Donna Ford said, we make up she said, the less we know about each other, the more we make up. But someone else said, we make up our minds quickly and we change them slowly. And that's part of the problem. And if everything we do is hyper now, that affects the conversations we're able to have or not have.
Absolutely. So what are ways that we can watch ourselves from triggering into that mistake of making a mind up instantly, but yet changing it slowly?
Asking ourselves, why do I think this about that person? So if you're white and you see a black person and you automatically clutch your purse walking down the street, you have to start interrogating yourself. Why? If you see somebody who you assume to be Muslim and they're checking with you in the airport and you automatically hope they get more security, you have to ask yourself, why? And then once you ask yourself why, you have to ask yourself, is this right? How can I fix this? That leads to you looking around and checking your information stream. For example, is my social media feed, are my feeds, are they just echo chambers where I just hear these same stories repeated? You have to ask yourself, who taught me this particular group is a criminal or is a terrorist? And start interrogating that. And once you start interrogating that, and you will hopefully come to the conclusion that you have been programmed, you have been brainwashed to think that way about a certain group of people. And so on your social media, if you follow particular people, start engaging in conversations with other people. Remember, social media used to be a place where you engage. Now it's a place where we attack. So let's start bringing that back. If you start going in a page and say, hey, I'm just asking questions here. And, sometimes because everything is so heightened right now, you might get shut down by some people, but there are going to be some other people like me, like you, who are going to say, no, it's actually this way. Maybe you should read this site. Maybe you should read this book. But look, check this out. What did the Pew Research Center say? Last year, about 25% of Americans admitted to not reading a book of any sort, audiobook, ebook, whatever, physical book. So that's the work. You can't lead if you don't read.
Omékongo, when you were talking about social media and being willing to find people saying different things, some people really feel the world on a very sensitive level. It can almost be toxic for them to go into those counterculture environments. So how do you select which of those voices do you go on to and engage? Like you said, you could get attacked, you could get shut down, but there are some, it's a careful fine line, because if you go into some, it's 95% attack you down, shut you down.
Yeah.
5% healthy. And to get to the healthy, it's just brutal.
Yeah. So what I would do, for example, is I would go, let's say, coming back to Black Lives Matter, or let's say the Me Too movement, for example, I would go, like if I was on Twitter, which is the main one I use, I would scroll through the hashtag of Me Too and see what different people are saying. And I would look and see if there are certain people who are coming off as somewhat objective, or at least not attacking, even though they're strong in their views, and engage them. Because you can look at the threads and you'll see some people just say all men are dogs and you need to accept it, and that's just the end of the day. And you'll see some other people who are saying we need to take every accusation seriously, because yes, it is true that most of the accusations are real, but there have been some instances where women have lied, and we don't want that to destroy a positive movement. That's somebody you want to engage with. But if you just go to the person who just has one strong opinion one way or the other, all women are lying or all men are dogs, then you're not going to have a productive conversation. But again, you have to do that work. So you can find Facebook groups and different people. Find those folks, and that's how you start. But some of us are looking for a fight. And some of us know that if we go to certain people, they're automatically going to shut us down. And then we say, see, I tried. And
right.
that's not genuine. That's not genuine. Those are some of the ways you can do that, is by start checking the feeds of people and seeing if it's somebody you can actively engage with. And it doesn't have to be somebody with 1 million followers. Sometimes it's better that they have few followers, because as you know, what happens is those people who respond to you with a bunch of followers, they're responding to you, but they're really just talking to their followers. Look at this idiot Omékongo asking me about this Me Too. Like, come on, that person's not talking to me. They're talking to their followers. So maybe the person who may have fewer followers but is interested in a genuine conversation. I've had some incredible conversations like that on Twitter just recently, just yesterday, by doing that. And don't engage in any name calling. Don't engage in any name calling. And somebody who is engaging in name calling, they're waiting to call you names too. I don't do that either.
Right. Well, and I love that you gave the feed example of Twitter, because Twitter really does allow that quickly. Facebook is much harder to do that, because one, Facebook is showing you your own bubble. Their algorithms are making sure of that. I know there are people I used to see that had very different opinions of mine that I rarely see now, that I would have to intentionally go back and be clicking their stuff for Facebook to send it back my way. So Facebook makes that harder. But Twitter, you're just scrolling. I mean, you can scroll through 1 million people's comments. So I love that. That's such a brilliant insight of just scroll and see who's having an intellectual conversation versus pure emotion attack conversation.
Right. And let's not forget that, with what they talked about with the Russia investigation, that whole thing with the bots. I mean, there have been some situations where some of us have been literally arguing with people who were not real. Like they were created and just to plop out information, automatic responses to things. So when you scroll through the feed, you can tell very clearly if somebody's an actual person by the thoughtfulness of what they're actually saying, no matter what side of the debate they lie on.
Yeah, and that's the danger, the unknown. And that's why you really got to do your, like we said before, you got to do your research, no doubt about it. Now, you and I both work to create a culture of respect. That's what we're both out there doing. What do you think is next in line to creating that culture of respect, to igniting that in organizations and communities?
Honest conversations. When we look at what happened at the Jewish synagogue, and as tragic as that story is and heartbreaking on so many levels, let's also talk about the fact that the Muslim community in that area at yesterday morning's check, when I last checked, raised over $80,000 to support those families. And when hateful attacks have happened against Muslims in that area, from what I'm reading, members of that synagogue and Christian groups came together to support them. What I'm saying is that there's a lot more going on the ground if we go beyond the media rhetoric that we see that's out there. And too many times we're quick to just go to social media, but maybe we should spend some time looking at local news stories. Now, I know there's been some issues as well in local news and some of the programming issues, but generally speaking, the local news stories are more likely to share stories of people working together, things that are happening Thanksgiving or the hurricane season, and how you see a story of the man who, different men or women who pulled out their speedboat and went door to door to pull people up. Going into, I believe there's a Twitter feed or a company called Upworthy, where they just list good deeds that people are doing. Like, start doing those things so you can start to feel good. I saw a story yesterday went viral on Facebook of a gay man, student, who asked like a high school jock, like a football star who's not gay or anything like that, ask him like to the dance or something. And it was like on video. And, the guy who's not gay said yes. And it was like, this huge, just those little stories. It can show you that there's still good in the world, that there's people, and it's not about whether you agree with different positions or sexual orientations or the like. Where can you go to find humanity? People reaching out and supporting each other, not condemning each other. Even if that high school jock said no, he wouldn't have done it in a way where he pushed him and said, "You're an evil child in the face of God and you need to be this." You know what I'm saying? It's like civility. Find those examples, because unfortunately, the big networks are not interested in showing that on a regular basis. They're also interested. I mean, some of us has to realize that many news networks that we're watching now are not news networks. They're not journalists. A lot of these guys are personalities who read teleprompters really well, and that's why we listen to one person that we like. But they're not. We don't have fact-based journalism on many of these major shows anymore. So you have to look for that.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you get here? What was your journey?
Well, for me, growing up in Boston with this name, I was tormented heavily. My whole family, we were beaten up and bullied because people hated people with names that sounded different. Growing up in Boston in the 70s and 80s and the 90s, Tarzan all over the television, people calling us African Bush Boogie and beating us up just for wearing African things when we went to school. I grew up in a culture where I was condemned just for trying to be who I was. And as you can hear, I don't have a stereotypical African accent. But again, people just heard the name, and the less they knew about me, the more they made up. They made up their minds quickly and changed it slowly. So growing up feeling suicidal and depressed for a lot of that and a lot of other reasons, as I started to learn more about my culture, a little bit more about my history, and started to develop pride for myself, I started to realize that my job is to help create cultures where no other child feels like I felt. And that led me to speaking to kids in schools, and that led to the work as an adult, working with companies and corporate groups and government groups and anywhere where people want to create climates where their employees feel celebrated and not tolerated. It led to that work as well. So that's how I got here. I didn't want people to deal with what I had to deal with. It's not fair. It's not right. Everybody should go into a place feeling like they belong. And I wanted to do my part to help create cultures of acceptance.
What was the point that created that either triggering moment that said, no, I'm going to do something differently here, or something needs to be done? What was the catalyst for you? Because this did come from hurt and from pain and from negative experiences. So what was that pivotal point?
So my parents are activists, and they fought for democracy in African countries across the globe. And when I was in the seventh grade, my father went to Zambia, and they tried to assassinate him. So for my entire seventh grade year, he was in a coma after having had his head bashed in. And when he came, so that was the year I acted up the most in school. That was the year I felt the most dejected. That was the year where I just wanted to give up, suicidal and everything. He came back, and having that presence back in my life, I wanted to leave that school. It was a very great school, a Boston Latin school, oldest high school in the country, but I didn't feel like I belonged there. And he said he came back, developed a little bit of amnesia, so he forgot that he and my mom forced me to go to that school. And so when the school form came out, he said, you can go anywhere we want now. And I was like, wow, I can go to a different school, to a low-performing school now with some of my other friends. And I said, no, I'm going to go back to that school. And I'm going to bust my behind and do my best. And what I did was, I also realized that same year, because of the bullying I was experiencing, Mike, I was running away from my culture. So my full name is Omékongo Dibinga Wanga Kakese Wachintukasa. Because I wanted to fit in, I would say, just call me O. I would hide my culture. And when he came back, I said, he's worked so hard for me. My mom's worked so hard for me. We have such a strong history. I'm going to start embracing my history. And as soon as I started embracing it and celebrating my culture like I saw other cultures doing, the way they should be, rightfully so, my grades started to change. My head started to pop up a little bit more. So that was a defining moment when I realized that I wasn't supposed to hide from who I was supposed to embrace it. And that made me realize I need to inspire other people to embrace and celebrate who they are as well, because that's where the true self-esteem lies. So that was my turning point.
Well, thank you for sharing. It's incredibly powerful. You're a big reader. You talked about it earlier. You can't lead without reading. And there's 3 books that you recommend, and a couple of them I know better than one. And so Think and Grow Rich was one of the first really self-development books of any kind I ever read, by Napoleon Hill. That's one of your 3. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Obviously, the world knows of that book. That doesn't mean everybody knows about it, though. And then Stamped from the Beginning by Dr. Ibram Kendi, I believe is correct.
Ibram
Kendi, thank you. Thank you for that correction. Ibram Kendi. Can you tell us why these 3?
With Think and Grow Rich, I think it's important that we develop a mentality, a wealth mentality, which isn't just associated with money, but just an idea of a no excuse mentality. The book celebrates a commitment to, and of course it's about making money, but it's about so many other things, a commitment to being your best, a commitment to getting out there and building your network, because your network determines your net worth, showing you how to create a blueprint to get whatever you want out of life. We need that today. We've always needed that. We're not getting that in school. We're not getting that anywhere. And that's why we're seeing levels of depression amongst Americans that rivals the levels of depression we saw during the Great Depression. And in some cases, it's even more, because now you get to see everybody else doing well on television, but you didn't have that during the Great Depression like we do now with shows like Cribs and back in the day, Lifestyles That Are Rich and Famous. So that's why I recommend that book. The other book,
7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Again, you need to develop the habits. Stephen Covey said, you can't talk your way out of a problem that you behaved your way into. So you can't sit there and say, oh, I want to be rich and wealthy one day, and all you're doing is buying lottery tickets every week. Right? Or you can't say, I want to teach people, but you haven't taken the opportunity to learn and get educated yourself. So if you want to be great, you have to study what great people do. Look at their habits. Les Brown says, if you want to keep getting what you're getting, keep doing what you're doing. So if you want to do something different and become something different, you have to do that work. And so I would ask people, who are the 7 people, if you had to pick who you are following right now, and what are their habits? If they're not doing the stuff that's helping you get successful, you need to find new people to follow. So that's why I think that book is great. Now, Stamped from the Beginning by Dr. Ibram Kendi, completely on the completely opposite side. That book is about the history of racist ideas in America. The book talks about how ideas of racist propaganda has developed throughout the centuries in America. The reason why I want people to read that is because I want them to see that many of the views that they have that have been racially formed in this country may be a product of a propaganda system that has been in this country through centuries, through our education, through our media, through our government on many levels. And my goal is, once you people realize, as Maya Angelou said, once you know better, you do better. If you realize that the product of your thinking, you might have been programmed to think that way because we're all programmed to think a certain way. This could be the first step in changing your viewpoints, because he said it's not enough to say that you're not racist. You have to say, I'm anti-racist. I'm against it. And I'm doing the work to change it. And I'm fighting it every single day. It's a great book. I mean, people don't even know about the racist origins of things like Tarzan or King Kong or the minstrel shows or the cartoons that they've been watching. And that book talks about those on a deep level. I think people will be shocked if they read that book. It was a National Book Award winner in 2016. He's a colleague of mine at American University. And I think we got to start diversifying our sources. It's a great source.
Thank you so much for the books, for the insights, the brilliance, your expertise you've brought to the table here. Omékongo, this has been a great conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. Hope to do it again.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you back. This episode's question of the week is, Mike, how do I support others when I'm struggling myself? This is a great question, and one that we need to be really, really aware of when it's happening in our lives. And that is, when we don't personally have the capacity, the bandwidth to help others, we need to pause and be compassionate to ourselves. Take care of ourselves first. Do something that helps fill back up our capacity, our bandwidth. You know, people often use the example of like a glass of water. If your glass of water of life and energy is down to, in the last, 10% of that glass, at least get that thing back up to 50% full so you have water to pour into somebody else's glass and help them. Take care of you. Do not put blame, shame, or guilt on yourself for taking care of you. The more you take care of you, the more you can give to others. The less you take care of you, the less you have to give to others. So give yourself a break and let others know at the time. Let them know that you love them. Let them know that you're here for them. It doesn't mean that you have to dive in to everything they're going through. And there's a big difference in saying, I love you, and, hey, I want to dive in and help you at this moment. There's a huge difference. It's okay to say, I love you without diving in all the time, and recognize when you have the capacity to dive in so you can fully be there. Second of all, if you do dive in and don't have the capacity, it could actually cause more pain for the other person you're trying to help too, because now you could become unreliable, and now they feel they're in some ways not being thought of. You don't care about them, and more harm is being done by diving in when you don't have full capacity, or at least enough capacity. The thing for this week's question, this episode's question is, have compassion to give yourself the capacity first so you can then serve others. So important. Thanks for such a great question. Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Respect Podcast, which was sponsored by the Date Safe Project at datesafeproject.org. And remember, you can always find me at mikespeaks.com.